like to call to order the January 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission at the Don B. Griffin Room at Town Hall in Harwich. This meeting is a hybrid meeting. Participation may be in person in the Don B. Griffin Room or online through GoToMeeting. Instructions for participating online can be found on the agenda, which is posted on the Town of Harwich website. We are going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first item of business here is a notice of intent for 9 and 11 Herring Run, map 3, parcels X3-2 and X3-3, SE 32-2546 for the construction of a new shared dock with float and dredging. This has been continued from December 6th, 2023, and I understand the applicants have requested a further continuance until January 18th.
Correct.
January,
It's a Thursday, our next meeting, because of the holiday.
next meeting is the Thursday.
The next meeting is Thursday.
Okay, any discussion?
I'll move to continue to the 18th.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
7-0. Next item is a request for change of plan for 25 Trout Brook Road, map 26, parcel C1-6, SE 32-2523 for construction of a reinforcing wall to shore up existing failing retaining wall. Do we have a representative here to discuss? Yes,
We do.
okay. Please.
For the record, Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management here, representing the applicant tonight. We submitted 2 revised plans to you along with a letter of transmittal, just noting the various changes that happened during the course of the project, all of which I think were actually positive. So I'll quickly run through those and then I'm happy to answer any questions. The first thing is that the original permit, we had asked and received permission from you to remove, I believe it was 10 trees for the construction access to get around to the right side of the house that we needed to be on in order to construct the new wall. Those trees were ranging anywhere from 3 inches to 12 inches, I believe, and we only needed to remove 2 of them for the actual construction, and it was 1 3-inch and 1 4-inch. So we had gotten approved a 1-to-1 mitigation ratio for replacement of trees, but considering that we only removed 2 and they were very small, we have revised our mitigation plan to reflect as such. One of the other things to note is that there was a previously approved patio area that needed to be removed in order to do the work to be reconstructed now. And the square footage of that stayed the same, but the shape of it and the location of it stayed the same as well. The shape of it simply changed a little bit, so we've noted that on the revised plan that we have submitted to you. The other thing that we were able to include for you is the actual as-built location of the wall. Ryder and Wilcox was able to get that, as we knew we would need it for a certificate of compliance anyway, and we had it earlier in the process than is usual, so we included that on our plan with that revision. And the last item is the I don't really, gazebo area isn't really the right term for it, but I know Amy knows exactly the place I'm talking about. During the reconstruction of the wall, the contractor discovered that basically the grade underneath it was, there was no air gap underneath it, and so the entire floor of it was rotted. So they, during the wall construction, kind of scraped a few inches of soil out from underneath it, and were simply requesting permission to put a small timber retaining wall alongside it to allow that airspace to remain below it. And all of this is above the wall in a patio area, not anywhere closer to the resource area or anything like that. So just noting that small change necessary for the longevity of the existing structure that's there. So all of that was included on the mitigation plan that we submitted revised. We also included a supplemental plan for the replanting of the areas around the patio. It had been planted previous and approved by you previous, but again, it had to be all taken out in order to do this work. So now we would like to replant it. The homeowner requested some species changes and revisions. And so we have submitted that detailed planting plan to you for a part of the record, and we have noted the three sources for, we'll call it nativeness, that we have used to determine that plant species list. One of them is your own Conservation Commission native plant list. Another is the county checklist put out by NHESP. And the third is a native plant list endorsed by the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, which is referenced within your commission's native plant list. So we think they're all very reputable sources in terms of being appropriate and meeting your regulation for species appropriateness, I guess. So those are the changes that we've submitted for you to review, and we hope you will agree that it all is pretty positive.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
Just a couple quick ones. So there are several, small changes, for the better. And they didn't have to remove nearly as many trees as they thought. They were able to work around the deck gazebo area in a different fashion. So I think you would have approved this had you seen it like this in the first place. And it seems like kind of a lot when you see it in writing, but when you go out to the site, these, these retaining walls are really more like landscape timbers. Everything's extremely minor and either within an area that was already going to be hardscaped, and previously was, or is for the purpose of helping hold things together better there. And it's all landward of the very large new wooden retaining wall that was installed with your permission. So, because it's a lot of tiny little things, I suggested a change in plan. I've already been in touch with Jen Crawford today about the shoring up the erosion control, which was getting overtopped. It looks like you might have some roof drainage or channelization issues of some runoff in these heavy rainstorms we've had. So just take a look at that.
Yes, I actually have I have a follow-up to that, Amy. We hadn't been out there in a little while simply because we were waiting for the plan revision to get approved before doing anything. So when you brought that to my attention, my account manager reached out to John Leong, and he's aware of the situation, and we've already scheduled a crew to go on site tomorrow to repair that or fix whatever is happening there. So it's taken care of.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have. I recommend approval of the change in plan.
Okay. Comments from the commissioners. Wayne?
No comment.
Alan?
No comment.
Jim?
No comment.
Brad?
None, thank you.
Mark?
No comments.
Sophia?
No questions, just compliments to your plant list, and it'll be really interesting to see how this does. It's creative and some new natives, so keep us in the loop. I hope it goes well.
Thank you. I'll give you pictures when we come for compliance.
Okay, thank you. I have no further comments, so.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I would like to make a motion that we approve the change in plan for 25 Treadbrook Road, map 26, parcel C1-6, SE 32-2523.
Second.
Oh, further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So next we have a request for determination of applicability for 10 Stanley Road. Oh, no, wait a minute, sorry.
No,
I skipped an item
Sorry.
here, sorry.
sorry, Phil.
Next, we have a request for a change in plan for 26 Old Campground Road.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna recuse myself from this one.
Thank you. 26 Old Campground Road, map 30, parcel C15, SE 32-2443 for the construction of a new dwelling. Who do we have representing?
I don't think anybody is on, and I haven't heard from them.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you want to take a few other items and come back to it in case they're delayed with another meeting somewhere. And if they're not back later, I mean, I can speak to it and at least take your comments.
Okay, why don't we do that? We should just
I'll get Wayne.
get Wayne. So I was right the first time. So next we have a request for determination of applicability for 10 Stanley Road, map 81, parcel A13 for modification of a deck and replacement of a driveway and hardscape.
He'll be in 1 minute.
Good evening.
I'm Phil Cheney, the landscape designer for the Green Bombs that produced the plan and the application that you have. I'm starting to work on one which is positive things going on. The homeowners really wanted to look to do as much sort of improvement and naturalizing of the site as they could. So like the most aggressive thing we're talking about is if you've seen the existing deck in the back of the house now, they have a stairway that's cut out with an awkward railing that makes use of some kind of dangerous concrete steps. I said, to me, it made sense to infill the decking over those steps and extend over the existing concrete walkway with some wooden steps. It would be safer and just more durable long-term. So it's no increase in footprint, we're just putting steps over the concrete walk, which would stay in place. This is on the edge of, sorry, this is Hinckley's, correct?
Yes.
I'm blanking for a second. Hinckley's Pond, where there's determined that, the water's edge is very close to the coastal bank down below. So we're looking at an inland bank on Hinckley's Pond, which is generally in good shape. There's some existing concrete retaining walls and timber retaining walls that while we don't have much use for, it seems like it would be more disruptive to take them out, so it makes sense to sort of leave them in place and then add some vegetation around there. On that bank, there is one fairly mature pitch pine that's pretty precariously located on the steep part of the bank, and it was suggested it might be worthwhile to have that cut so it doesn't fall and undermine and, destabilize the bank. Also, it was pointed out by Amy that there was some scrap iron in the water down near the existing dock, which we could have removed as well. The balance in the back area within the 50 feet of the inland bank, there's currently a drain pipe that runs from the downspouts, the outlets onto the bank. We'd be removing that and replacing that with a dry well that would be set in the newly graded lawn beside it. So it would be grading towards this low spot with a grate in the lawn and the downspout going into that. So we're minimizing the amount of water that might be heading towards that inland bank. The existing walks are all concrete with flagstone, things like that. There's existing asphalt driveway. Replace all that with pervious materials, natural stone pavers on sand base, gravel on the driveway, native plantings where there are currently either no plantings or exotic plantings. So really it's sort of replacing the existing hardscape with permeable hardscape and upgrading into native plants for the balance of the project. I think I've covered everything. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Amy?
A lot of small changes, but a lot of changes that are gonna do a really good thing for this property. It has a drainage issue. It's all hardscaped and drains either toward the house or down towards the resource area, which we don't want. So they're gonna either capture runoff where it is by, changing porosity of things and then directing things appropriately into dry wells. And then adding additional plantings, in areas where, like Phil said, there's either none or they're exotic. So this is a great, effort from the homeowner, I mean, pretty much to do the right thing, by their property. So I would recommend approval with a -3 with the condition against, fertilizers and chemicals, which if you've been to the site, you can tell that it's not being done, and they don't intend to, but we'll still put a condition on there.
Okay, thank you. Sophia?
No questions.
No questions.
Same here. No comment.
No comment?
I have no further comment either.
If there are no further comments, I will make a motion that we approve the request for determination of applicability with,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
that's all right, Jack, with a -3 determination for 10 Stanley Road, map 8-1, parcel A13, under the condition that no fertilizers or chemicals be used.
Second?
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
7 and 0. Thank you, sir.
Good night.
So the next item is a request for a certificate of compliance at 226 South Westgate Road, map 56, parcel M2-5, SE 32-2461, for construction of a new single-family dwelling and appurtenances on a vacant lot.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Do we have someone representing this online?
Yes, hi, Mark Zippo here, developer and owner.
Okay,
So
do you?
if you want, I'll
Sure.
introduce it. So this is a request for certificate of compliance. The commission approved this construction of a single-family dwelling on what was a vacant lot, a couple of years ago. It's, in the outer riparian from the Herring River, pretty far up Herring River. And, there were some slight modifications compared to what we had permitted, but there's actually there's less square footage of new structure in the buffer than what we had permitted. There's some kind of retaining wall areas in the back that are plantings in between, but again, it's less new structure than what we actually permitted, and it is approximately where everything is supposed to be. We looked at it in the fall, and the last thing summer, fall, the last thing they had to do was install either a split rail or a living fence or boulders to delineate where that no-touch zone is gonna be forever. And they have installed that split rail fence. So I would recommend a cert of compliance with ongoing conditions regarding no fertilizers or chemical usage and maintaining that no disturb zone. And just to mention, because Mr. Zippo's on the line, It's nothing I'm incredibly concerned about because the runoff is not getting past your limit of work, which you can take down now if you wish. But the site in general on the side of the house, kind of the northeast side of the house, looks like you are having some runoff and some drainage issues there, and you're getting a lot of water going down. And by the time it gets down to the flat area where we have jurisdiction, it dissipates, and it's not eroding, into, it's not an issue, I don't believe, for conservation, but just may want to consider heavier plantings on that slope, and if you were ever to try to break up that slope more with any other type of retaining walls, just talk to us first and make sure you don't have to apply. But with that, I would recommend a certificate of compliance for 222 South Westgate Road.
Okay. So, do we have comments? Wayne?
No comment.
Alan?
No comment.
Jim?
No comment.
Brad?
Just a quick question for Amy. Any changes in distances to the 50-foot buffer?
No,
So just reductions, footage, and no
Yep.
change in distances?
yep.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mark?
No questions.
No comment.
Sophia? Okay, I have no comments, so can we have a motion?
Yes, hearing no further comments, I will move that we approve the issuing of a certificate of compliance for 226 South Westgate Road, map 56, parcel M2-5, SE 32-2461, with the conditions that no fertilizers or chemicals be used and that the no disturb zone be maintained.
Second?
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy
New
New Year.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Would you like to go back to the other one, because we're kind of done with hearings after this?
Sure. So,
We're gonna go back to 26, but just
Still-
stand right there, because I don't think it's gonna take long. All right. I don't think he's online, so I'll just see if you are comfortable with my recommendation, or if you want to table this. So
Okay.
26 Old Campground.
so we are going to consider 26 Old Campground, a request for a change in plan at 26 Old Campground Road, map 30, parcel C15, SE 32-2443, for the construction of a new dwelling. So,
I had expected John O'Reilly for this one, but I can go over it, and if you feel like you can approve the change in plan, I'm okay with that. If you feel like you want to table it to the next one, for him to be present, you can. So this was approved in 2021, and it's set to expire in July of 2024. So, they will need an extension, which maybe they're seeing first if they can get this plan changed before they ask for an extension for it, is my guess. There's a lot of positive changes, so if commissioners who were on this board a couple years ago remember, it was a kind of a longer, several hearing process. You have, as you go down Old Campground Road, which is off Gilbert, is, I think, the last of the 3 lots that were developed on the right. This one has not been touched since it was approved. It's in its natural state still. You drive down, it's a very long driveway, and on each side is wetland, and then you go uphill to where the house site would be at the top of a hill. It's a weird site because you actually have a coastal bank here, even though it's way the heck inland, and it's because it's the first area that's high enough, that has a slope that's steep enough above the floodplain to upper reaches of Allen's Creek. So all this way inland, you actually have a coastal bank, even though it's not a sediment source coastal bank. So we had a pretty tight limit of work and disturbance on this project. You did eventually approve it. So originally you had approved 2,189 square feet of building. Now only 1,170 square feet of building is proposed. The approved pool area, this is where there was a different change, was 182 square feet, and now they're proposing 462. There is a net reduction of hardscape in our jurisdiction of 738 square feet as proposed. The original project was right up to that 60-foot buffer with structure. This one has 64. So I visited the site, and they have not started any work. Had Mr. O'Reilly been here, and it's still now, I would have been recommending, the change in plan. It says amendment here, but it should be change in plan to you, to make this the new plan of record. So, see what you folks want to do, if you're comfortable with that as a plan change for a pretty big reduction. Or if you'd like to wait and have Mr. O'Reilly come in.
Okay, thank you. Let's have comments, Sophia.
I have no comments.
I would consider this a positive, and
Yeah, I think I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Yes, so do I.
Okay, well, looks like positive change to me. I don't know why we wouldn't approve it. I'm not sure what we need to talk to John O'Reilly about at this point, so I think we can proceed here.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I will move that we approve the change in plan for 26 Old Campground Road, map 30, parcel C15, SE 32-2443.
second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So that's 601, I guess. Okay. Wow. So, next, what do we have now? We have
Minutes.
2 minutes.
Yes, one has been in your Dropbox for a while, the very short meeting from last, so we didn't print those out, but we did print you out copies that were on your table today of the new set that just got finished, the larger set.
Well, as it happens, I wasn't here for either of these meetings, but I have comments about both of them. There. I'll just put it out
Jim
there while other
Atkinson.
people, unless other people have comments. One is that for the March 15th last year,
Yeah,
under the discussion of Cold Brook business on page 2, second paragraph, it mentions something about the Herring River during a conversation about whether there was going to be sediment or something. And I assume that's a transcription mistake. I don't, now I have to actually,
Yeah, I just put in Colebrook. That was my only comment on that.
oh, the same thing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
It should be Colebrook.
where?
Second paragraph, under the Coldbrook thing, in the middle of the paragraph, there, it's recounting, I think, something Mark was saying about sediment. Here, wait a
Mark
minute,
Holman asked what the timeline was.
I'll tell you in a moment.
Tailwater Pond.
Yeah,
Says Herring River, it should be Cold.
Oh, there it is. Sorry, got it.
okay.
That was all I had as well.
Okay, and,
If I have something.
go ahead.
On the bottom there, it says the vote was Mr. Colson and Mr. Hall abstained. We recused ourselves.
So,
Recuse them, yeah. You're right.
okay. Is that the March 15th or the?
Yes, sorry. Speaking of the Colebrook thing.
So is that considered as an like you recused yourself, but I think that's still considered abstention for, I don't know, I have to ask.
We left the room, so that's all I want to make clear.
I'll check.
Thank you.
Other comments for March 15? Anyone care to move to approve?
Sure. I will move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of March 15th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. My own comment on the other ones is commissioners absent.
I thought
Okay,
Jim Atkinson,
no,
oh, it should be,
John Ketchum.
okay. That's right, he was chair.
Yeah, I was chairing the meeting.
Whatever. Okay.
Okay. That's all I had to.
Anyone
other
else have
comment?
comments?
Nothing.
Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of our meeting of December 20th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Okay, so, let's see. Now we have discussion and possible vote on update on a violation at 435 Route 28. So we start with that.
Yes, so, I'll start, if that's okay, and then Attorney James Norcross is present online on behalf of the Patels, who are the owners of 435 Route 28. 90-plus days ago, you required that an existing conditions plan be provided to you. That deadline was December 19th. They made their deadline and provided this plan. It has the edges of wetlands. This is on your desk, on your table. There should be a copy of it as well as in Dropbox. It shows the shed addition, which is an addition on a slab that we believe in some fashion is connected to the building for the purpose of storage. So it shows the wetland, the 50-foot buffer, the 100-foot buffer, and also the grades around the property, which, so the grades in general and the location of this little addition are between 5 and 6 feet. So you're aware, flood zone is elevation 11 here. So, Mr. Norcross has informed me that the Patels are in the process of filing a notice of intent with the commission for, I would assume, and you can correct me, Mr. Norcross, with the intention of keeping the addition where it is. I have a few questions for you or your clients, but let me know if I've missed anything up until this point.
Good evening. For the record, James Norcross, representing the Patel family. Amy's correct. We should have a notice of intent filed very soon. It's in process with the engineering firm. They're not certain on the shed addition. They're looking into possibly moving it somewhere else on the property. So that was sort of part of the delay with the notice of intent, is we needed to see where the setbacks are on the as-built plan. So that's something they're going to determine the next week or so, and then we'll be able to file the notice of intent and move forward with the property and the process.
So just, they have the right to file a notice of intent for this work, and the commission would judge it at that point. Just so you know, the Patels have paid their fine that was initially levied to them, and thus far have complied with your orders as far as doing this plan in a pretty expeditious fashion, seeing as how it's still hard to get engineers and surveyors to do work. My recommendation is that we give them 30 days to file said notice of intent. We haven't taken further enforcement action yet, but, so an additional 30 days, that would have, technically been kind of 4 months since the violation was last discussed, to get a formal filing here in front of you for you to discuss its merits.
Okay, thank you. Wayne, comments?
No comment.
No comment.
I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Sounds reasonable.
I agree with Amy as well.
Sophia? I just have a couple of questions. I agree with your recommendations. I don't remember if the original, when the addition was originally constructed, whether we ever discussed that. Is that something you know? How long has that been?
Yeah, it's within the last year or two.
I see.
If you look on, you can see it on Google Earth. I don't know exactly when, but within the last year or 2 years.
Okay, so my other question is just sort of a detail about this. I guess this is an existing conditions plan, yes. That there's an outline of something that appears to be attached to the east side of the existing building and to the north of the shed addition. You know what that is, Amy? Is that,
A walkway, potentially?
excuse me, walkway? Do
Are
know
you
what I'm-
talking about the line that kind of, the jagged line,
Yeah, and there's.
right by the elevation lines?
By the elevation.
There's
line.
elevation, it almost seems to be at the corners of where there's some elevations. 6.25, 6.25,
Oh, those.
5.84. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and is that,
I'm not that might be concrete walkway, but, Attorney
to-
Norcross, do you know?
It's not part of the building. I believe it is a walkway because there is, on the back of the building near the shed, there's a doorway.
Yeah,
That's an exit out onto that space. I can't recall offhand if it's concrete or what it's made of, but there is some sort of walkway back there.
yeah, like a ramp.
all right,
We
okay.
can,
Yeah.
I can,
Nice
I
that
can go
that were
look.
labeled so it was clear what it was. That was my best question. So,
Sure, I can make a note of that for the engineer for the filing, so we get some detail on that.
I
okay.
guess maybe on the back side too, on the south side of the building, because there's kind of that square area, which I think is just fencing. But if little things like that could be, more clearly labeled, that would be helpful.
Well,
Sure, no problem.
Actually, as you state that, the fencing that exists there doesn't appear to be labeled here.
It is.
Is it labeled?
Well, the fencing that we're questioning, the vinyl fencing that's right along the wetland line on the east side.
There isn't fencing though, right by the parking place?
There is, there's a steel guardrail there,
Oh,
as
I see.
well as on the other side of the property, it's not labeled, but there's the vinyl fence, which seems to potentially go into the access easement a little bit, which is a different issue that we really weren't talking about, but also guardrails around that parking area there too.
Actually, I drove by there today and I swear there was a vinyl fence blocking view of the shed.
There is, that's been there,
So that's off the northeast corner of the
it's right here.
building. Yeah, okay, all right. All right. Okay, is action required here, or?
Why
or
don't,
we can
yes, why don't
vote
we,
on-
because this is a violation and an enforcement action, so it would be helpful if you would move, let me just get a date on the calendar, make sure that the 3rd of February is a weekday. It's not, it's a Saturday. So you can either, 30 days, you could either say Friday, February 2nd, or Monday, February 5th. That will need the notice. Actually, if you file on either of those 2 days, February 2nd or February 5th, their hearing with us will be February 21st, so. It doesn't make, why don't we just say the 5th,
Sure.
February, file by February, the NOI by February 5th, Jamie?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
So, a motion for an enforcement to file a notice of intent by February 5th.
Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we require the applicant to file a notice of intent no later than February 5th, 2024.
Second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
7 and 0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Good night.
So
That's
next we
good.
have update on Hinkley Pond monitoring report.
Yes. So, the commission recently had wanted to discuss, Hinkley Pond was treated back in 2018 or 2019? 2019, and wanted to see if they were in compliance, if the town was in compliance with its orders of conditions in terms of monitoring and what the state of the pond is looking like. So, I did reach out to Danya Newsy, who is our natural resource director now, and today I did get a little bit of extra kind of monitoring data, not maybe to the extent that we want it, but at least there's been evidence that it's been being looked at a little bit in 2022 and 2023, which I will send to all of you. Happy to pass around the data sheets. But I think it would be good to have Don have a conversation with me, or perhaps come and have a conversation with you all about ongoing monitoring there, because it does not appear that the monitoring has been continued. It looks like the last formal monitoring report that was done by Ken Wagner, who's the scientist on this, that nothing has been done since 2021. Other than, some good citizen science, but there's been a lot of changes to the areas around Hinkley Pond in that amount of time too, to see how changes might be affecting water quality. This year, a lot of ponds were kind of cloudy, and unbeknownst to us as to why potentially. But there were some concerns from Mr. Wagner back in the 2021 report, that there was more fluctuation in the phosphorus concentrations that they were seeing still in 2021, which is 2 years after treatment, than they kind of anticipated. And he attributed it potentially to a lot of alewife foraging and mixing up the sediment, as well as at the time, 2020 or 2021, I think was the last time there was production in some of the bogs near there. But he did stress a need for continuing monitoring, and I don't think certain things like resurvey of bottom conditions was ever done. We should have gotten another 2 more reports, and we haven't gotten those. So I don't know if it was never budgeted for previously in the Natural Resource Department, but I think it's something we need to make sure gets done. The town spent a lot of money to do the treatment, and we want to make sure the pond is doing well. So I have a few other things, but that's kind of the gist of it, is that we're not in compliance yet. And also, a watershed management plan should be prepared. And that was to kind of be with, the Natural Resource Department, this commission, as well as citizens who live around the pond. We're interested in participating in that, and that hasn't been started yet.
Okay. So do we have comments? John?
I have a question. Is it expected that Natural Resources would be the overseer of the monitoring or the officiator of it?
They were the applicant for CPC funding, for treatment of the pond. They were, on the order of conditions. I mean, ultimately, it's the town.
Right. It's a different office, so would it be appropriate to communicate with them and?
Yep.
see if
I
we
just don't
can't
think,
figure
I
out how to
don't
get it
think,
done?
yeah, I don't think he knows, our new natural resource
He's
director.
brand new. I mean,
Right,
it's
probably
possible.
knows, so I did send him the orders of conditions. And that's, but I'm happy to have that conversation with him. We still have some, well, we have landside funds available for Hinkley Pond. I don't think we have funds still with CPC for any type of monitoring, but I'd have to look into that.
Yeah. So, other comments?
But I can,
Questions? Alan?
I just had a question or comments, because I'm not clear on this. So we did this work back in 2019. Basically, what was the actual work, what was the goal of that job, of that water? What was our goal? It was to
bind the phosphorus to prevent harmful algal blooms, which were both a public health risk as well as an environmental health risk. We had a lot of fish kills in there. But the project was to apply aluminum, alum,
okay.
yeah.
And then, so we haven't followed up with any monitoring to see how effective that was? Is that what you're saying?
They did the first 2 years, but then
And
they
then-
did not,
And the order of conditions says you have to do
for
100.
10 years,
And so only 2 years of the 10, so we're out, how many years now?
2
5?
year, 2,
That's
yeah. So it was,
2019, right after the treatment, 2020 and 2021.
we're done.
And I think that's all that was contracted for,
That may have been,
I think. what we
even
need
though
to
the
double
order of conditions asked for more. I
Right.
don't know if that department contracted for more.
Are there reports for 2020 and 2021?
Yep.
The Dropbox didn't have those.
Yeah, no, they're in there.
Well,
The final, the 2021 is in the Dropbox for the.
Did it not get moved over?
No, it's in the
Oh,
drop, it's in the folder for the
Last meeting?
December 20th.
Sorry about
meeting.
that.
That was Wagner's final report.
Does it cover all of 2020 and 21?
Yeah, it was written in,
April through October, 2 years.
Yeah, it was written, I think, in November of 2021. There were two. There was one in 2020 and one in 2021. There were two separate reports.
The one I reviewed had just pre-application data, then 2 months in 2019. And then that's all I saw.
Yeah,
well,
there's
21.
more.
Okay, I'll take a look at that then.
Right. So, I have a few comments, but other comments from anybody?
Well, I just wanted to finish that's too bad, because now we're not gonna have we don't have a real baseline, right? I mean, how are we gonna, going forward, how are you gonna monitor, or how are you gonna determine what was effective and not effective?
You could
With
pick
the
it up.
gaps?
Yeah,
Well,
You can with a gap that far?
It's not ideal, and it's concerning because it's not in compliance with the order conditions, so it is the town, it's all of us.
Yep.
It's still concerning.
so, but it's not quite like that, because people well, Heinz, while he was here, organized the PALS program, and Hinckley's was
Yeah.
one of the ponds
That's what I
that has been having data taken continuously for almost 20 years now. And so that continued after 2021, in 22 and 23. The most, and there's a lot of data in there, and I actually, the PALS process has a lot of latency in it, I guess I'll call it, because for the 2023 data that is taken from June through September, all that stuff goes to UMass Dartmouth. And you don't get the full compilation of all the data in the spreadsheet until spring of like '24. So for 2023, we don't have any of that data yet. But there's 2022 data in a spreadsheet, which is most of what you need. It's got like total phosphorus. There are things that are missing, but it's not like there's
Right.
nothing there.
I think I'm gonna disagree with you. Are you suggesting that the PALS program is a substitute for what was required in the order of condition?
No,
Okay.
not exactly, but it's, I think with some refinement, it could be made to do that. So there needs to be some discussion about what actually needs to be done in order to satisfy
Yeah.
the order of conditions.
I
And
think
we
the
need
two
to-
processes are independent.
Right, but there's still a lot of useful data in that stuff.
I agree with that as well, but at the same time, the post-application monitoring was very specific and independent of PALS.
One major thing it's lacking, and I have the PALS data, that I just got, doesn't have phosphorus.
Oh. Well,
It
so,
has Secchi, transparency, it has, Secchi depth, it has dissolved oxygen, but it doesn't have,
How many months, Amy?
so,
so I have only one report from 2023, and that was done in July. This is, Don's gonna look for more,
So
this
it's
is before.
One
So-
month versus,
Wait a
And
minute.
then we have a few months in
Like that.
2022.
wait, just hang on a minute.
I'm concerned about the picture you're painting here.
Just hang on a minute. PALS, what you have are the field data sheets.
Right,
There's two things about that. One is that along with the field data sheets, that's data that's taken with instruments on the pond. There's also water samples taken at a set of depths, and those are shipped off to UMass Dartmouth. And
Right.
and they put them in the freezer and get around to them sometime during the winter. So there is phosphorus data there.
okay,
As well
understand.
as a bunch of other things, like chlorophyll A and other things of that sort.
yep,
That all that stuff is tabulated in spreadsheets. And like I said, there is a spreadsheet with all that data for Hinckley's and other ponds in Harwich for 2022. We don't have that yet for 2023 because it hasn't been done.
right,
And so, having a meaningful discussion about what more needs to be done,
okay.
we need to look at those spreadsheets first, which I have them, I can put them on
2022 you have.
for 21 and 22, yeah. But then the question is, and the question you're asking is, does the town need to engage a third party like Ben Wagner to do an annual assessment with detail, A, on the phosphorus, and other things related to the health of the pond, and the effect of the alum treatments.
Mm-hmm.
And it also sets some kind of conditions because, Skinnecook was done this year, and whatever is determined as the right thing should be applied also for.
Yeah, Skinnecook had very
for
similar conditions.
any other pond that gets this kind of treatment.
I don't know.
What?
I really don't agree with your assessment on this. I think PALS is 1 month.
No, well, phosphorus 1 month, but the other things are taken, there's 4 to 6 samples taken over the summer.
No, I think what John's saying is we need to look at what the data that we do have maybe from PALS, and then determine
That is what I'm saying.
if we need, and we may need another source. Yeah,
Yeah, to me, crafted a monitoring plan, it went in the order of condition,
mhm.
April through October, with a suite of measurements. What you're suggesting is not what we permitted. So to me, I'm not quite sure where you're going with this, John, and maybe it is the
I'm-
way it needs to go.
All I'm trying to do, Brad, is clarify what the existing information is. That's all I'm trying to do, and it was being represented as less than it actually is. It may not be enough. All I'm trying to do is clarify
I think
what
you're
that
trying to
is.
marry the PALS to this monitoring requirement, and that's not appropriate.
Okay.
It seems to me. but I do agree, we should look at everything and see where it lands, but it, you know, I think what happened, we had a changing of the guard with the Department of Natural Resources, and some
Yeah.
things
Well,
got dropped.
things did get dropped, and regardless of where the data came from, it was and remains responsibility of the Natural Resources Department to submit the reports that are required here. I mean, nobody's arguing about that. So, but what I want to clarify is actually can we just talk about what is in the order of conditions
Yep,
here?
I have it right here.
That specifically addresses your point, Brad. It's like item 22, I think.
I can just read it if you want.
Please do.
So special condition 22 in the order of conditions talks specifically about monitoring. So post-treatment water quality shall be monitored as follows: within 24 hours of the last treatment, 1 and 2 weeks after, then monthly for the rest of the first year after treatment, with stations at the deepest portion of the pond and sampling at 1 meter intervals for temperature, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, pH, and 2 meter intervals for alkalinity, total and dissolved phosphorus, and dissolved aluminum. So that's just the first year. Such depth transparency will be recorded from the surface on each sampling date at each station. Resurvey of bottom conditions with emphasis on mollusks and other invertebrates visible in a video survey will be conducted on 2 dates, once within a month after treatment and once a year after treatment. After the first year of treatment, so where we're at right now, though I don't think the video stuff was ever done, after the first year of treatment, post-treatment water quality testing and survey of bottom conditions as outlined in the above conditions shall take place for 10 years. This shall include measurement of dissolved aluminum. Each year is to occur when water temperatures are above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This shall be reported to the Conservation Commission.
So one ambiguity here is that last bit. It says every year, but it doesn't say whether it's once a year or what the intervals are.
It says as outlined in the above condition, which is meant to be that same condition. But it's, doesn't make sense to, you're not gonna do it 24 hours, 1 and 2 weeks after. So to me, that reads as annually. The way I read that is an annual.
The intention was April to October, that monthly samples, April through October.
Every year for 10
That's
years.
not what you voted
It
on.
doesn't say that here, so I can see why you think that's a good idea.
So April to October is, there's a fish, condition 11 about fish kills, but, I don't see it elsewhere.
Well, some of this stuff is collected by PALs. You're objecting to that as being any valid data for satisfying this thing.
No, I'm not.
Oh, I thought you just were.
I'm objecting to what seems to be looking for a way to get over the condition that we have before us. So I want to be very careful that that's not what's happening
I'm
here.
not trying to do that. Part of what I was doing is addressing Alan's point, which is we lost a couple of years. I don't think it's a total loss, that's all. And
But we have to pick up.
we have to pick up. I absolutely agree. And furthermore, even if you accept whatever PALS data there is as useful data, it isn't complete even against
No.
this list. I don't see conductivity
Conductivity.
in some of that PALS data, and they
Nope.
only do total phosphorus, they don't do dissolved phosphorus.
Right.
So, and if you read Wagner's report, he's drawing all kinds of conclusions based on those details. So I agree, it's important to have those details. The question is, how should that be done? And what is the appropriate action for us to take in order to ensure that this happens?
We should get copies of the invoices to see what he charged the town for.
See
in the
what who-
contract. Well, when they first did this, they're monitoring to see if they did do,
Well,
if they got
contract-
paid.
So what CPC included in its funding, if I remember right, and I haven't reviewed this recently, in its funding for this was 3 years of monitor. So we can go back and look at the Solitude contracts, see what they say, see what the town signed, make sure that that is, what was done at least satisfies those contracts, and if the contracts weren't satisfied, yeah, something needs to be done about that, but it's different from, I don't think the contracts were drawn to satisfy the 10-year order of conditions that was imposed by the Conservation Commission.
Condition number 22 is not clear on the frequency of sampling, but I can tell you the intent was not to have a single point sample after the first year. That tells you almost nothing. Very limited utility to a single monthly sample. So we're stuck with number 22. I'm pretty sure the intention was to have April through October sampling. 10 years is a lot. I don't recall what happened, Amy, with that, because I'd be surprised if I asked for 10 years. It just seems like a huge commitment.
That was probably me.
Yeah. I think I would have asked for 3 to 5, but recognizing that a single monthly sample in a calendar year is just,
We can, we probably have a tape of that meeting too, so I can look at it.
But we can have a discussion
Right.
about what the reasonable requirements are.
Right.
And Natural Resources can request a change to the order of conditions, right? And, I mean, we could resolve that. We don't necessarily have to stick with ambiguous wording here.
Well, right now, so the permit is expired at this point. So, the conditions live on as is, but it's not like they can come back and amend this.
So how would one go about?
I'd have to think about it. I'm not prepared to think about that right now, or to have a conversation about that right now.
One other question, and pardon me, because I haven't got my computer and able to see all that documents there, and it may be there. The points of where they're monitoring, was that shown on the plan of the pond, showing the specific areas?
there were 4 stations, I believe.
But it shows it on an area somewhere where
I
those
don't
points are?
remember.
I'm just curious to where they were. Were they near the bogs or near the mouth of the river where it goes down?
Where they were monitored, they treated a fraction of the pond.
Basically in the deepest section.
Everything deeper than 12 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's all the interior of the pond, if you will.
Yeah,
And there is a map, and I can just look and tell you, because I have it here.
Well, just from my own information or my own knowledge, it would be interesting to find out, because whereas Amy said, those bogs have been out of production,
Yeah.
and they're always the biggest elephant in the room, even though I've heard different discussions that it was only contributed to about 5% of the problems at Hinckley's Pond and different seminars
Yeah.
that I sat in on. But it would be something to really determine and know.
It is important. The pond was murky this year, more so than Seymour, and it really shouldn't have been that close to an alum treatment, I think.
Right.
So I think it's important. It's not just procedural. I think it's instructive for future alum treatments. I think, for taxpayers, I think it's pretty important to get the right information.
And the other thing that I'm leading towards with the bog is the inoperation of the bogs, the flowing of the water, pumping it in and pumping it out, moving that water. How did that contribute? Did that help? Maybe that's not happening now. Maybe that's.
Yeah.
Well, you
there's-
should read Wagner's report, the final one, which is in the folder for the December 20th meeting, because he talks about the possible effects of these things. And he
Yeah,
does
he's not drawing conclusions.
describe some of the contribution of the phosphorus to exactly that, pumping water out and then flushing it out of the bogs. And he observes that in 2020, there was he observed a lot of, he didn't use the word debris, but that's the word that I can think of. Cranberry debris, that is, leaves, stems, and berries in the pond itself. He didn't observe that in fall of '21, I think is what he said, but somehow things were worse in the fall of '21, than they were in the 2020. So if you read the report, he's sort of juggling all this information and kind of trying to figure out what it
He's-
all means without saying anything super
He's-
conclusive.
He's basically saying he doesn't know, and that's why it warrants more study,
Right.
because there's like a lot of variables. I actually have this pie chart from pre-treatment about, they studied the loads into the ponds, load from Long Pond, internal load, cranberry bog discharge, storm water, all that. So I do have the initial, which is kind of interesting. And it's a small amount, is what they're saying, is from any discharge from bogs. Most of it is, most of it is from internal load, meaning that's already on the bottom of the pond. It could be from detritus, it just could be, it's old phosphorus that's just getting recycled. Pretty big portion from Long Pond, which is not surprising. What they're finding after rehabilitation is most of it is actually from Long Pond. So,
Was he saying that phosphorus was higher in 2020 and 21 than expected, and visibility was lower?
in '21, he said that.
Okay, so, yeah, that's a concerning statement. That it maybe didn't work. It didn't work very well.
Well, the other thing he says is none of the toxic algae. It's a different mix of algae that they're finding.
Right, we didn't get a harmful bloom,
Mhm.
but it's just cloudy.
Right.
It's cloudy and, I don't know, there's a lot of things there that are really mysterious to me.
Interesting.
Like this year, there was a brown algae that we hadn't seen. It wasn't toxic, but we had a brown algae this year.
It was dark, it was murky.
All right, so I'll talk to Dawn and see if we can have more information drummed up. We need to make sure that there are still, well, as John said, there's field data sheets, which I just did get, but make sure he's aware too of samples being sent to UMass Dartmouth for actual water samples, just so we know, have that. I'm gonna check the Solitude contract. And then we can have a discussion about, basically, I'll try to gather as much of the rest of the data as we can, so we can have a productive discussion on what else we need to do and how we can move forward. I'll have a sit down with him about this particular project and what the requirements were.
You can sign or not.
Where do you think we can get clarity on that special condition number 22 on the frequency of sampling after the first year?
I mean, I'll look at the tape.
Yeah.
You folks can also look at the tape. The meeting would have been, see, the orders of conditions were issued. So, it would have been the meeting of 2/20/2019 is that hearing, was when we issued the order.
Does the Skinnequid order specifically just deflect to the Hinckley's order? Is that how it goes?
I wasn't here. when
I
that
don't
was,
recall,
not
I
part
will,
of
I
that.
can check it.
Yeah, that'd be key, because if it just says do what they did at Hinckley's, we don't want to do what they did at Hinckley's.
It wasn't exactly, so let me look.
So, one thing that might be done is just to directly talk to Ken Wagner and ask him what he would suggest as further follow-up here. Since he says in the report that he thinks further study would be useful. Most obvious thing would be to engage him to do this work.
Yeah, but we gotta see if we even have funding.
And I say funding for 10 years for April to October is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
If it's not established right now, that's going to be hard. So I think we'll have to think about what will satisfy everyone's interest to learn what actually happened. And I picture some set of years that, you know, can look at and try to understand why things may not have come out as well as they should have, or if that's in fact the case.
Mhm.
And then number 24 on the watershed plan, yeah, that's in everyone's interest to see that happen too. And I'm sure Don is like thinking, you know, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. I think first let's get the data and what's missing and what's needed and where we go. Let's do that first. I think that's a big enough task, and then we'll tackle the watershed management plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll invite other people to participate in that. I know there's a small association of people on the north side of the pond off Catherine Rose Road. I know there are people on the south side who are also interested, but they're not like a association per se, but interested parties on the pond. But like on the north side, the Selcos who were
Right.
really active in this process would be.
Is PALS just for Howard, or is that a Barnstable County organization?
It's all of the Cape, I think. I don't even know, it's probably not even all the Cape, it's probably other parts of Massachusetts. I don't know,
It's most the Cape,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think there's a similar program that might have a different structure that's off the Cape too.
Yeah.
But it's really comprehensive, it's high-quality data.
Mm-hmm.
The laboratory is one of the best in Massachusetts at doing this work, so it's good stuff. It's just that I did not view it as we're gonna adopt PALS to meet this order. So we have to try to figure things out, we gotta try to help our Department of Natural Resources, because, you know, the new person inherited this situation, so we just follow Amy's lead and see where it
All right.
goes, and on my behalf, I'll dig into the report I missed. Apparently, it's in a different Dropbox folder, so I'll
Right.
find that.
We'll move it.
Yeah.
We'll move it into
Okay.
tonight's. But yeah, I thought they had all gotten moved over, but I guess not, so apologize for that. Okay. We'll put it probably on the agenda for a quick update next meeting, but we may not have much, for about a month, but
Mhm.
I'll put it on the next agenda for an update, let you know if I've gotten anywhere or if I need your help. Okay,
all set?
good.
Anything further? So, final item here is discussion of Shore Road erosion from December 2023 storm.
Just wanted to show you you've already seen had already seen a lot of the photos, but we had substantial damage. Pretty much all the town staircases at public beaches were lost. But then a lot of the properties in the west part of town, along Shore Road, it was very similar, almost a mirror of the December storm from last year, where people lost 10 to 15 feet deep of their properties. There was a storm surge of 6 feet on top of high tide, so even the storm last year hadn't been that significant. It got up and over somebody's seawall and started to pull it apart from the backside on Shore Road, which is interesting. So what I've done is, people lost a lot of sand, and people were very concerned that we're at the very beginning of what is historically a stormy time of year, where we get a lot of nor'easters and stuff that erode the beach. So been issuing administrative review permits for properties that, after I've visited them, determined that they lost significant amounts of sand, really to be put down now to be sacrificial sand, so that when we get another storm, the hope is that it takes some of that sand and not more property and more vegetated dunes and banks, which is what it took. So administratively, with conditions about amounts, sediment quality, being above high tide, things like that. I've been issuing admin reviews for sand installation, we call it sacrificial sand. And then there are a few people who have approached me about wanting to do other types of more significant solutions, ranging from fiber rolls to rocks and bulkheads, and I've, of course, directed them that they need to hire an engineering firm to look at that, and what they potentially can do plays a huge part of that is what landform you have, whether you have a coastal bank or a coastal dune. The performance standards are very different. Also proximity, I mean, the goal is to protect your home and a pre-78 dwelling, not necessarily, and I've had this conversation, not to protect your clifftop deck. You know, that's nice to have, but it's not necessary, you know, the regulations are in place really to protect homes, especially homes that were built pre-regulation and not so much accessory type things. So we'll be seeing some more of those. I've done some sampling myself out there, and it's a true mix of bank and dune deposits. It's changes within properties, and a lot of it's fill. So right now, folks are trying to get license agreements to use Pleasant Road Beach parking lot to be able to stage and put sand, you know, be able to put sand there so they can then truck it to the various properties along Shore Road, but that's in the hands of administration at this point and selectmen for that. I've encouraged the town on its town beach stairs, such as in the campgrounds or and elsewhere where we have staircases down to beaches and not just walkways, to look at seasonally removable bottoms of stairs, or ones that are aluminum and can be lifted up and secured in anticipation of a big storm event, because that's what happened is the storm and all the debris, you know, everybody else's stairs hit up against everybody else's stairs and knocked them apart. So if we can get rid of, maybe talk about in the future for when we're doing regulations, if we're doing beach access stairs, talk about making the bottom sections of staircases be lift-upable or removable, because we wouldn't have had as much damage if we didn't have the bottom sections. The posts would have been fine. Water will go around the footings, but it's the stairs themselves that it gets all caught up in and rips out. So the town has to replace every single one. And because of the added weight, some of the footings got compromised too. So, something I chatted with DPW about moving forward, but they may want to consider that. Can't think of anything. We did have some flooding as well. Flooding was another main issue. And I need to get an update from 47 North Road on the status of their, just so that you know, 47 North Road, I had requested a revised quote, really just looking at basically a hazard study, and I never heard back from them, so I'm guessing that they don't want to do it anymore. So we need an update from about where Mr. Smith is at this planning. I went down there after the storm, and it was similar. It's still there. There's more and more damage.
So, on Shore Road or along south-facing beaches there, where there's been significant damage and some property owners may be wanting to put up hard structures, are we going to be dealing with situations where there are homes that are not pre-78 homes, where people are going to be wanting to protect them with hard structures?
They might, you might, and I've tried to educate people about that. So The pre-78 rule, it's when the Wetland Protection Act went into place. It's really something that DEP has sometimes gone with, or sometimes not. They used to be very stringent that it had to be a pre-78 dwelling, not just structure, but a dwelling. And in previous years, I've seen things that they've approved for clearly post-78. Sometimes they'd say, oh, you have to keep a chimney, you have to keep a wall from the old structure, but now what I'm seeing a lot of times is they're approving things that are post-78, as long as they're kind of in the similar footprint.
I see.
We're gonna have to cross the bridge when it comes. I mean, if it's a coastal dune, it almost doesn't matter the age of some of the structures, because coastal dunes have to be allowed to move and migrate, and the vegetation can't be altered. So it's very hard, period, to do any sort of hard structure in a dune. Coastal bank's a little different. But you also have to, there's a footage, or a measurement, essentially, where you're considered to be in hazard. So if your foundation of your house is closer than 40 feet from the edge of a historically eroding coastal bank, you're considered potentially in peril. And they look at those a little more favorably. If you're more than 40 feet, which a lot of them are here, they don't consider them to be in immediate jeopardy. They look at long-term erosion rates, and we're seeing these very, episodic major erosion events, but we don't know what the long-term average is. So we'll have to take them case by case, and that's what I've told everybody. And I said, please consider your options. We had a really good, comparatively, the project that you approved last year, where at 43 Shore Road, right on where Little Beach or Beach 22 was on Shore Road, they had quite the mix. They had some bank, they had some dune, they had pre-existing some structure there. So we did a complete hybrid solution for them, and they were within 40 feet of an eroding bank, and they had not much prior. So you did a hybrid solution. You did harder structures where it was clear coastal bank, and then you tapered into fiber rolls. And after the storm, I went down there just to see how that held up, and it held up really well. The fiber rolls were exposed but not removed. The sand on top was removed. They're gonna put it back. That's what it's supposed to do. I was figuring that those anchors would have been pulled out from those rolls, and they didn't.
On the edges.
Fine.
Wow.
You did lose, so in front of, you allowed a bulkhead basically to be driven behind the dune, but where the dune changed to bank on the eastern side of that property where it connected to another wall. And the dune was lost, which it would have been lost regardless of whether the wall was there or not. But everything held, and there's no additional scour.
Yeah.
So,
Have you walked from Red River to Saquatucket?
no, but I've been on parts of it, not the whole way.
Yeah, lots of real instructional things going on there. Not as much erosion, but,
No.
where there's a bulkhead and nothing on either side,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can see dramatic erosion at the edge of the bulkhead, which is one of the reasons why DEP's been very careful about those structures, because
Exactly.
they send the problem to the adjacent
Yep.
property. And there's some cases between Red River and Saquatucket where it's just,
Yeah.
it's a case study where, really badly exacerbated erosion
Yep.
on the edge of those bulkheads.
We had a couple of onshore road, because I did walk the whole stretch there. You'd have one on either side, and then you had the person in the middle who had nothing, and they lost 15 feet.
Right, people in the middle are getting hammered.
Yeah.
Near Saquatucket, and it's gonna be a big issue, no doubt about it.
Well, and something even the people who have structures, they think they're protected, but it's overtopping them.
Yeah,
And also, I've tried to explain to people that you put those structures up, but you have to maintain them, and you have to keep sand over them, because you're depriving the beach of sand that would normally leak out of a bank. So your beach level is dropping, your high tide's getting higher, your waves are starting to crash farther into shore. So it's actually, it's what you need to add sand annually if you have a structure.
If I could add on the walkway piece too, I think from Red River to Saquatucket, there's just walkways busted up everywhere. And
I know.
so it's a pretty bad storm in that regard. You see it every year. But I think in my time on the commission, I think we've had a case where we're starting to approve these walkways pretty readily.
Yeah.
And I think in some cases, we have to rethink it. If there's a natural path to the beach and a low elevation drop, that's worked for forever. For hundreds of years, people have gotten to the beach that way. When you have a big elevation drop, people need a safe
Yeah.
way to get to the beach, so I get it. But I think people have come to us, we've said, okay, put in a new walkway, and they're all getting smashed up.
Yeah.
And so I think if we have real modest elevation changes in existing pathways, that might be a more sustainable approach in some places.
I agree. I also like the idea, we used to, in the Outer Cape, they used to get hammered. We made people engrave their staircases or their piers or their pilings with their names or their addresses, so we know when they showed up down the beach, whose they were.
Yeah.
So it was less work, we had, no, you go get them, so. That was a requirement there.
It's a good idea, because otherwise someone could load up on pressure-treated wood right now if they want it.
Oh, man, it's a
They want
mess.
it, lump
It
it
is
out off the beach, it's everywhere.
A mess.
Really? That bad, huh?
Special, yeah, basically, near Allen Harbor collected a lot of things from west of there. So, but yeah, that jetty there, like everybody's staircases ended up.
Yeah. A lot of erosion at the toe of jetties too, the
Yeah.
landward toe.
Yep.
And again, you put a hard structure in those locations, the energy will go somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a big issue, I think,
Yeah.
for the commission.
What happened at the end of Neal Road? I hadn't been down there, where there's a big jetty that they were supposed to be, what's the
Yeah.
name?
I know what who, yeah,
I don't believe they've done the work.
On
Did
the,
it.
on the,
all three of them.
Oh, wow.
but on the east side, it's like, there's a lot of erosion. That's
Yeah.
the end of the street, and there's town stairs down to the
Yep.
beach there. I don't,
We lost those stairs.
Yeah.
From the storm, which is, I mean, not, we normally do. We put, so they, after they finished that stone there, and it is lower, it's 6 inches lower than it previously was, the jetty. They dumped a lot of sand on the town beach, but it's all gone. And we dump sand there every year when we dredge, we always put sand there, but it just disappears.
Yeah.
That area, but yeah, it's a huge jetty, so it's on the blind corner, so you're losing a ton, and, but they did the work, they did the jetty work. I think we might have reviewed it for sort of compliance maybe a year or so ago, I'd have to check, but they did all 3 jetties. I haven't checked there since the storm, but I haven't also heard from them. We've been a little reactive this time, because so many places you can be. They started the new Wixon rebuild today, so, over at the end of Harbor Way. That'll be good. That's all I have.
anything else from anybody?
One item?
Yes, sir.
The Bell's Neck management plan?
Yep,
Can we look to maybe get that back into play?
I want to, yes.
If we have a quiet one this winter? I think the editing is not all that extensive, so it might not take that long to wrap it up.
Okay. Sounds good.
Anyone else? Well, I don't know about you, but I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oi, oi, oi.
8 o'clock.